Dear colleagues, we start our briefing to the topic the findings of investigation at Odessa Port Plant, impact on privatization. And I offer the floor to Ihor Bilous, head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Well, we have no findings yet. We have just started to work on this. First of all, talking about the investigation, in general, what we have in the privatization process in Ukraine, it is now facing the threat. This is the first threat is that the voting yesterday failed. Verkhovna Rada did not vote for the draft law to amend the privatization process. We would address this matter. The second is a massive information attack on mass media and on Odessa Port Plant. I would like to communicate you what consequences this attack may have on the privatization process in general. As concerned the voting in Verkhovna Rada, I talked a lot about that. These amendments, they are three small amendments. The first is to cancel dividing the stake into pieces because, for example, as such strategic targets of privatizations, we would like to sell them by large stakes, 90%, for example, by small stakes. This is not only our demand, but also demand of foreign investors. The second is to allow advisors to be engaged to the privatization process so that it is professional. And the last is to prevent participation of the aggressor country in Ukrainian privatization process. I think we understand what this means, not to allow the companies which are under the sanctions and on the list of FATF, which money are of unknown origin. This is just international, global, well-known practices and commonly accepted ones. And as concerned the privatization, how can we improve the situation to convince Verkhovna Rada to adopt these necessary amendments so that the privatization process start. The privatization process concerns not only Odessa Port Plant, not only Oblenergo's and cogeneration plants. The privatization targets may be many more mid-sized and large companies in the second and third wave of privatization process. If these amendments are not adopted, until they are not adopted, the new investors can't be engaged, can't be attracted to Ukraine, and Ukrainian budget can't receive the proceeds from privatization. And we hope that the reform can go forward and the budget, it will have the large deficit. That is why why we need the privatization process to fill in the budget. I have already told about the advisors. You know that we have not enough funds to hire large professional advisors, but we have carried out a lot of efforts, and we have good dialogue with donor institutions who provide us money to invite technical, financial, and other professional advisors, but we should provide legislative basis to contract these advisors. The next scene, Odessa Port Plant, I would like to say the following. During several weeks, the mass media published many articles. The problem is when we deliver and communicate some not examined information, we influence the process which we have as concern preparing this privatization, since we have about 10 investors. All of them are Western investors. They observe the situation in Ukraine, and any negative news, they have negative influence and may have potential consequences, negative consequences on the value of privatization target. Large-scale privatization is the practice not only in Ukraine, but also, for example, in the Great Britain in the times of Margaret Thatcher. The same things happened to Rolls-Royce in Great Britain, and also in Japan and in Italy. There were information wars, there were interests backed those attacks. Nevertheless, the privatization of those objects, of those targets were successful, and we also hope for successful completion of the transaction on Odessa Port Plant. Mass media in Ukraine expressed some claims, some allegations concerning the Odessa Port plants. These claims will be examined by us, so the Prime Minister gave us a direction and instruction, and we will have a meeting next week, and we will consider the results of Odessa Port Plant, of its economic activities, its operational activities, to understand comparative performance of the plant activities. And we will communicate to the general public the findings of the Oversight Committee analysis. On Thursday, we will have the sitting of advisors who are involved in Odessa Port Plant privatization process. They are Baker & McKenzie, Ernst & Young, and regional administration, also international institutions, donor organizations, where the status of this project will be discussed, and the pro forma schedule of privatization, which would be soon approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, as well as the procedure of the evaluators' appointment. And the advisors also will present the key problems of financial, legal, and other nature which we face now at Odessa Port Plant, and which can hinder transparent privatization of the Odessa Port Plant. All this information will be communicated to the general public, and also we will communicate when we start the privatization process of Odessa Port Plant, and all of us shall oversee the events and updates on the events of privatization of Odessa Port Plant. We have also other targets, and I can see that we will go a difficult way. We announced yesterday the President Hotel privatization process, and we received yesterday the judicial prohibition on this privatization. So we offer you to participate in the dialogue on this privatization, which was yesterday forbidden by the court. We have investors interested in the privatization of this target, despite there is an entity renting this facility now. Anyway, we would like to privatize the presidential hotel so that it would be our example to further use in the practice of large-scale privatization. We have several questions from UCMC. The first is the meeting you mentioned with participation of Odessa regional administration representatives and other institutions. Shall you broadcast it online so that the privatization could be transparent? The things which we are going to discuss and debate, they are confidential. The parties which will take part in that meeting, they have already signed the confidentiality agreement. And as we have the confidential information involved, we will soon compile a file which would have no confidential information, and we will deliver a briefing on Friday with that information. This is not only about Nortima, not only about the dock number 4, which we can not and also privatization of Odessa Port Plant. I think it would be interesting briefing. Are there any more questions? Chico Vitali from Union. As concerned the law, yesterday some MPs said that they don't like the amendment on inviting advisors. Maybe you can reward it, provide the new updated version, or maybe you shall write a new draft law, an updated version of the law. Thank you for your question. This is good that you observed yesterday the meeting, but you know that also we have decided to lift the rule of inviting advisors, but anyway, the MPs failed to vote for the draft law. What does this mean? This means that there are some other reasons why they don't vote. All MPs fear that we will invite advisors to every process, but this is not possible. This may concern only large scale facilities. When we talk about the advisors, we talk only about the strategic targets which are very important for the state, which are of large influence in certain sectors. If we sell strategic enterprises, for example, like Ukr, we need professional persons, professional experts who will draft documents in a professional way. The SPF can't compile such documents in such a professional way. MPs unfortunately don't understand this. We shall deliver lectures to them so that they understand our SPF's problems. We would like to launch privatization of Odessa Port Plant and 6 Oblenergos and 4 cogeneration plants. And because the delays with the privatization of these targets bring us to procrastinations and cause the budget deficit. If they don't adopt the law, we can sell the facilities only in October or November next year. The other question is this reform, like other reforms, for example, the reform of state service, the problem is not in the wording of the law, but in some other aspect, in achieving some political consensus. Who should take a step so that this political consensus is reached? I have talked to all the factions and I talked to all the leaders of factions. All of us understand each other. We have the same positions. But when we start voting, at the moment of voting, they don't vote. Someone is outside because he's having a cup of coffee, someone is not in the voting premises for some other reason, and there is not enough MPs in the hall to vote, to press the button for the draft law. We are ready to cooperate with MPs, but some MPs for some reason didn't vote. That is why 3 or 4 times the voting yesterday failed. I had a talk with the Prime Minister and all key factions, and all of them voiced out support. We are talking not about electric road vehicles. We are talking about more important topics such as large-scale privatization, which is far more important. And finally, I would like to stress that these amendments are not the last amendments. We have 10 amendments more, but we should start at least with these 3 amendments. We should amend the procedures. We should shorten the bureaucratic processes. If we would try to privatize more companies, we should accelerate this process and focus on that the enterprises which cause losses, they should now be transferred to private investors who will make them profit making. Let's do that. Thank you, dear colleagues. The briefing is over, as well as the working day of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Thank you.